Let's start. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is Vulnerabilities Everywhere. We are going to talk about virtual appliances and their security impact on your cloud environment. A little bit about myself. My name is Tohal. I do security research at a small startup called Orca Security. Scratch that. Let's start from the beginning. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is Vulnerabilities Everywhere. We're going to talk about virtual appliances and their impact on your cloud environments. A little bit about myself. My name is Tohal. I do security research at Orca Security. I used to do malware analysis and threat intelligence before that. And you can find me over at Malicious Delish on Twitter and Tohal at orca.security for my email. So let's talk a little about virtual appliances, what they are and how they differ from traditional on-premise appliances. Well, the first obvious thing is that virtual appliances are in the cloud. This makes them much easier to deploy and much faster to deploy, in fact, but they are just as hard to configure as your traditional on-premise appliances. The difference is that traditionally, when you had an on-premise appliance, you would approach a vendor and ask them for their piece of software or piece of hardware, be it a firewall or an IPS or some dedicated web server. But these days, as we are all migrating to the cloud, the software providers had to find some way to catch up and keep up with the migration to the cloud. And so the virtual appliance was born. What a virtual appliance actually is, when we're talking about virtual appliances, we're talking about pre-configured servers that you can simply, with very few clicks, just deploy to your environment. Again, be it a web server or a security product such as a firewall. So to ease the transition for software vendors, the cloud providers have come up with a marketplace. The AWS has one marketplace, the Azure has a marketplace, and Google Cloud has a marketplace. Each of those operates a little bit differently, but essentially what they offer is a platform for software vendors to offer their pre-configured servers for customers to deploy with very few clicks. So what is the problem with those marketplaces? Well, according to our research, the average age of an image on those marketplaces is 14 months. Those images are what will eventually become the appliances and the instances in your environment. Sometimes they can be even internet facing and pose a serious security risk, because those 14 months means that for more than a year, those images were not updated, were not provided security patches, or given any sort of maintenance. And that is really where our research stemmed from, because we encountered some images on our customers' environments that were not really neglected and in a poor state of patching wise. So how did we gather the data? Traditionally, in order to gather data on on-premise appliances, you would need to install an agent. Luckily, we are able to utilize the cloud provider's ability to create a snapshot of the appliances and actually mount the snapshot of those appliances to a pre-configured machine that we own, and we are able to scan the disk that way. And essentially, without the need to install and configure any agents on any of the appliances, we are able to scan en masse a very large amount of appliances. So we started out small. Unfortunately, marketplaces have no API, so we needed to create some kind of automation to go through the process of opening the web browser, browsing to the appliance, clicking launch, clicking the accept all the terms and conditions, of course, after we have thoroughly read them. And for the first couple of appliances, we were able to do this manually, of course, just to see if our process is going all right and if we're getting all the data that we need. But eventually, my screen looked a little something like this. As you can imagine, my face looked a little something like this. I was very proud of myself, looking all cyber, cyber, cyber. So that's where things started to go wrong. When we set out and targeted about 2,000 appliances, we thought to ourselves, hey, let's just go ahead, subscribe to all of them, and then start the scanning. What could possibly go wrong? Well, apparently there is a cap on how many products you can subscribe to at once, and that product is around 1,000. So if you ever try to subscribe to more than 1,000 products on any single marketplace, just know that your account will lock up for several days. And it's going to be a very hard time debugging that issue. Just beware. Another issue we ran into was, let's call it the fine print. Because when you scroll down a product page on the marketplace, this is pretty much typical. As you can see, the price would be $0 an hour with about 4 cents for the compute instance. Oh, wait, there's a hidden fee for $50,000 a month. We failed to notice this. Fortunately, we did manage to get a refund. So now we've scanned over 2,200 machines. Let's go a little bit over the results. So how did we score the appliances? The first criteria was whether the appliance was using an up-to-date operating system, whether the underlying operating system of the appliance was still receiving security updates, is it still supported by the operating system vendor. This was an all or nothing sort of criteria. If you were using an up-to-date operating system, you got 100% of the points. And if you were using an unsupported operating system, that is basically 20 points docked off your final score. The second criteria was 17 critical vulnerabilities that we've defined. We're talking about high-profile vulnerabilities such as Bluekeep and HeartBleed, something that is very easy for even a beginning hacker or any script kiddie to exploit and take advantage of. The third criteria were vulnerabilities with a CVSS score over 9. This accounted for 15% of the total score, and essentially for each vulnerability that we've discovered on the machine, we've docked 5 points. The fourth element were vulnerabilities with CVSS score between 7 and 9, and finally, the overall number of vulnerabilities we found on the machine. As you can see, each criteria had a relative weight to it when we went to calculate the final score. So this is the final pie chart of the scores. As you can see, we have a very small amount of appliances that got an A+ rating, meaning they had very little to no vulnerabilities and they are using an up-to-date operating system. A much larger number of appliances actually got an A rating, which is very impressive. What we found that in this category, we found mostly appliances that were updated in the last 2 to 3 months. In the B category, we had a little bit over 10% of the total appliances that we've tested. But most worryingly, as you can see, the vast majority of appliances was found in the C, D, and F categories. That means those appliances are vulnerable to many vulnerabilities. Some of them are have very high exploitability, and many of them are even using unsupported operating systems. So as you can see, there's a very clear correlation between the age of an image and the number of vulnerabilities we found on it. That is very much to be expected because as time passes, the new vulnerabilities are brought into light. But it is still worrying that this so old images were still found on the marketplace, still not being updated and not being patched. So now that we have all this data, what are we going to do with it? First of all, we had to ask ourselves a few questions. What's interesting about this data? What value does it provide? Who is going to benefit from this data? And what are we going to do with it? So the answers were, first of all, there are vulnerabilities everywhere. This is very interesting because when you install an appliance that you just got from some vendor, you have an expectation that they're not selling you something that is going to be a security issue for you. And we've clearly found that this is not the case. When you buy a product off the cloud marketplace, you have to make sure that this isn't posing any security issue for your environment. We can actually learn a lot of valuable lessons from that data, such as don't count on the vendors to keep your appliances up to date. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And who is going to benefit from this? You are. CISOs, DevOps, security analysts, anyone that is thinking of migrating to the cloud, you're going to benefit from this data because it makes you more informed regarding what security issues am I going to address when I migrate to the cloud. And what are we going to do about it? We gotta fix it, or at least we're going to try to. So let's talk a little bit about security disclosure. Whenever you do any kind of security research, it's considered best practice to disclose whatever vulnerabilities you have found to the vendors of the software that you've scanned or that you've found the vulnerabilities in. Naturally, this isn't your typical kind of security research where you find a new vulnerability and have to disclose it to the vendors, but we've figured that it is best to disclose these vulnerabilities anyway, because people are probably going to take advantage of this data and start scanning for internet-facing appliances. So this was not an easy process. Obviously, whenever you're dealing with security disclosure, even for just one company, it's going to, some cases, be a nightmare. When you're dealing with 540 different vendors, it is a much bigger nightmare. Can I just say that no one apparently has heard of security.txt? If you could approach your company and implement the security.txt in your website, that would be great. Thank you in advance. So out of the 540 vendors that we've approached, only 15% of them have actually responded, which is very unfortunate in our eyes. We've tried to contact them with more than one email. We've tried to contact them via phone. We've had very little success, as you can see. 40% of those who did respond to our emails claimed that it was the customer's responsibility to patch the systems on their own. Take that as you may. And 26% of those we've contacted and responded have claimed that the vulnerabilities we found were irrelevant, either because they are not vulnerabilities in their actual product, and they thought that the underlying operating system or any underlying packages that they have installed on the machine were basically not their responsibility. We disagree. I think personally that if you are a vendor selling a product on the cloud marketplace, it is your responsibility to keep that image up to date, keep the underlying operating system patched, and make sure that whatever you are selling and eventually representing your company with is not posing a security issue for your customers. most of the responses that we gotten for our disclosure were actually pretty great. They were very friendly, they were very cooperative and trying really hard to work with us in order to fix the issues that we've highlighted in products, be it updating an image and uploading it to the marketplace to replace the old one, or be it removing the image completely from the offering on the marketplace. Unfortunately, there were also some companies who chose to take the more aggressive route and tried to threaten us with legal action. Fortunately, they did not go forward with those threats. But it would be nice that if a company is reaching out to you, or a researcher is reaching out to you to point some security issues in your product, please know that we're doing it only to make the world a more secure place, and we're trying to make your product more secure and the experience for your customers a more positive one. And it would be really nice if you took that to heart and not get defensive about it. Following the publication of our research, what happened was some of the vendors, as I've mentioned, really took the time to update their images and post new ones on the marketplace. Some of them have even implemented a new pipeline to ensure that their appliances on the marketplace are up to date with regular updates, and some of them have decided to remove the products entirely. What we expect from vendors following this research is, first of all, make disclosure more easy. Like I mentioned, we're only trying to help. We're really looking for vendors to remember that cloud marketplaces are not fire and forget. You really have to keep maintaining your offerings there, keep the images up to date, and even with your own software and the underlying operating system. Other than that, you should really communicate to your customers whether you are in charge of updating the operating system and the appliance for the customer, or whether that is on the customer themselves to take care of. We know that in traditional on-premise appliances, that responsibility is many times taken upon by the vendors themselves, and this is not the case in many cases in the cloud. So in conclusion, what are the main takeaways from this? First of all, virtual appliances require more attention than traditional on-premise appliances when you're setting them up. Why? Because you need to ensure that the appliance you're getting is up to date, apply all the security patches before you even start. Security disclosure still has a long way to go, as I've discussed, and the shared responsibility model we can see is shifting a little bit more towards the customer. As we said previously, it would be on the vendors to notify you whenever there is a patch available for your appliance. But these days, it seems that the model is the responsibility is shifting more towards you, the customer, or you, the sysadmin that is taking care of those appliances. And you should really be the one with their finger on the pulse. Ultimately, you should communicate with your vendor and ask them whether they are responsible for delivering patches and security updates for your appliance, or you are. And I think that pretty much wraps us up. So thank you very much for coming, and have a great day.